Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and these are all of the containers that we're growing in outside of our kitchen door. So sometimes people will call a garden like what I have a kitchen garden or a cottage garden, just because we have lots of containers and lots of little different styles of gardening here. You can see this is our second main plot for gardening, and we have our corn and potatoes in this, and this is just going to be an update. I hope everyone's going to enjoy the previous video that I'm going to put up, which is going to be the tour of the Cheyenne Super Day. That is today. This is Saturday, June 25th, I believe it is, and that was the Cheyenne Super Day that we were taking my grandson to and having a good time there. He got to ride all kinds of rides and do all kinds of different games and things to win little prizes. And it's just basically kind of a free day for everybody in Cheyenne to enjoy that the spring has arrived and it's almost July and all of that. So it's just a great way to get out, enjoy some community, and have some fun. So anyway, this is the second main plot of the garden with my corn, potatoes, things like that. It is cool today. We're looking at temperatures at 70 with tonight's temperatures in the mid 40s. So the watermelon and cantaloupes are really not going to like those temperatures, but I think they'll be okay because we're supposed to go back up into the 80s. Not tomorrow. Tomorrow it'll be 69 and then same temperature overnight. But then on the next day, which will be Monday, it's supposed to go back up into the 70s and 80s. So we'll be looking at that. And then, of course, always July and then August are our hottest months, with it being in the 90s, sometimes up to 100. So I'm sure that the watermelons and cantaloupes will rebound then. But loads of growth happening here. I did fill in the corn with some more planting of some corn kernels just to get them up and going a little bit better, because we had a couple of spaces in there. And I apologize if I sound tired, because I am tired. We walked today with that Cheyenne Super Day probably a good 4 or 5 miles at least. It's huge, and then we had to park pretty far away. We had a dog with us, so we just kept walking and walking and walking. We made several passes, so I am tired. So we took a break today from gardening, but I wanted to give everybody an update of what's been going on in the last few days with the garden. We've got things going on. We've actually harvested some lettuce and have eaten that, and we harvested some of the cilantro today and added that to our tacos. We did basically kind of like a street tacos, or just tacos in general. I actually made the tortillas and everything, so all by hand. Most of what we ate came out of the garden, except of course the meat. So everything's looking great out here, just a lot of growth. Even the ones that I had just planted a few days ago to fill in. Look at that. That corn is already up a few inches. So it'll be catching up with the other very, very quickly. And again, this is the early sun glow corn, early sun glow hybrid. So it's a little bit more tolerant of a lot of different conditions. The only issue that I have with this corn is that it does have a lot of suckers, and we do have to go through and take a lot of the suckers off. Sometimes it'll have 3, 4, or more suckers. So we do have to take the suckers off of it. It is an early corn, so it is ready in about, I would say, roughly 70 days, definitely not 62 like what the package says. So about 70 days once the corn is up. And it is beautiful corn when you get it and it's all mature and everything. It usually gets to about 8 inches. It says 7.5 or so, but it actually gets to about 8 inches. Some of them I've had up to 10. So it's really nice sized corn. It looks like full-size corn. We enjoy it. The height of the corn does not get as big as the bigger varieties. It only gets to about 4 feet, sometimes 4.5 feet tall. Usually starts tasseling or growing the tassel at about 2.5 feet tall. And then again, it is supposed to be ready in about 62 days. I guess if you have optimal conditions, that would be true. But for us, it's ready in about 70 days. Usually by the end of August, I'm harvesting the corn, or early September. So everything looking great with that. And then we have our shallots are still doing amazing. My garlic is now dying back, so I think that we may end up losing this garlic. But before we completely lose it, I may just actually let it overwinter and just stay in here. And we'll see if it does better next season. Then, of course, I'm going to be adding more garlic to that. I've just had wonderful luck with the shallots. We've got more borage over here still waiting. We got some people that came and picked some of it up. But we still have 7 left. So we will be giving those out to everybody. We got another raised bed. If you remember, we have the one for my grandson. And then we went ahead and added another one. So we picked that up, filled that up, and we've got different lettuces, sweet mesclun, and which just means a mix of lettuces. And it's a couple of different things in here, and some flowers. Potatoes still doing wonderfully. They're actually, some of them are blooming. So we do have a couple of blooms on those. Now this is Kennebecs. They are a more of a late season variety or mid-season variety potato, so they will not be ready completely until about September when the vines die back and everything. And then we will have to, of course, dry them and everything to get them into storage, to store the potatoes. So hopefully we'll get a good harvest off of these. We do have 4 rows instead of 3 like we did last season. Basil is looking amazing. I have so many different types of basil. This is a sweet basil that I have here that's also a mammoth basil, so it's really huge. So we've got this pot full, we've got our borage beside of it, and then I have a pot with 50 different varieties of basil in it. We've got cinnamon basil and lemon basil and just all kinds of varieties of different basils. And then we've got some more radishes that are planted here in front of the potatoes and behind my Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes, which are now really beginning to put on some size. Getting to the point that we need to start thinking about putting the cages on them. I mentioned it in a video ago or so, but we have not done that yet. We've been still just holding off a little bit because we want to see them nice and pretty without their cages for a length of time. Sometimes we put the cages on immediately after we set them out, but this time we didn't. We're just gonna see how this goes. And of course we've got another Kellogg's breakfast tomato over here, still doing wonderfully. We also planted some lemon cucumbers right in front of the shallots, which have came up and are just taken off. So everything just looking great through here. And our eggplants are really now starting to take off. They looked bad for a little while, kind of raggedy, and now they have really started putting on some new leaves. I've noticed some of the center sections are starting to get some blooms on them. They're not very tall, but they are supposed to be a giant variety of eggplant. So I'm expecting that with the heat burst coming up in July, they will definitely take off. And then all the other plants you see in there are different sunflower varieties that we have in here. In the very middle section, we have a mammoth sunflower, and then on the outer sections, we have shorter versions of sunflowers, gray stripes and autumn beauties and the teddy bear sunflowers, a whole different mix of different sunflowers in here. And as well as we have some aster flowers and some just under coverage types of flowers. Then our beans have definitely filled out. All of the rattlesnake pole beans have came up. All of the Kentucky Wonder have came up. All of the Japanese yard longs, all the bush varieties, all the beans are up and are just beginning to get their runners and things set on them. We've got a couple of them that have gotten runners on them. They're just still very, very short right now. I'm sure that in July they will definitely take off. And you can see the newer Japanese yard longs that I had planted. All of our red curry squash are doing well. I'm getting ready to start thinning those because we've got about 2 or 3 in each one of those sections. And we've got actually a couple of more seeds planted just recently because for some reason we had a couple of them not come up, but most of them did come up. So we just filled in, and then of course we'll be doing some thinning. I do try to transplant when I'm thinning as much as I possibly can, but it does not always work, especially if the plants are already to the size that they are right now. The new pepper is doing great. All the tomatoes still doing wonderful. I have, I think, lost one tomato right now, and you can kind of see it behind the tomatillos. Let me see if I can zoom in on it. And it looks like that. I'm not sure what's going on with it, but it looks like it's dying out. And I don't know if it just didn't get enough water, even though I'm watering everything. I don't know if it didn't receive enough water, enough nutrients, what's going on, or if it just was a bad plant. I mean, it looked full and beautiful, just like all of these others here, and then it just went like that overnight. So not real sure what happened with that. And then we had also an unfortunate event with the accidental tomatillo that got mixed in with some of the cabbage plants or the cauliflower plants, and that was that I think an ant clipped it off. So it is no longer with us, so we lost that tomatillo. But I do have some more seeds that are started, so we'll see if anything happens with those. Peas are looking wonderful. They're starting to really run up the trellises now. You can see some of those climbing up and up and up. So we've got the Alaskan snow peas, Cascadia peas, as well as the super snappy all in there together. We've got now 5 rows in there, and I'm actually considering planting a 6th row in there. And we've got the lettuce behind the peas over in behind the trellises back there, and really starting to get a lot bigger now. And I actually filled in some more seeds in there just to get some nice lettuce in there, and it's a loose leaf variety gourmet blend. But all the tomatoes, other than that one, looking absolutely fantastic, just putting on huge amounts of growth. Definitely going to have to put the tomato cages on the super sauce tomatoes, because as you can see, they are much taller than the other ones, and definitely starting to fill out now, just like I said they would. And we have a random sunflower that had came up behind everything, and I just let it go, and it's getting pretty big. So I'm just going to let it see what it turns out to be when it blooms. I did have some acorn squash come up. We've got a couple of those here and back there that did come up right here next to the roses. So I'm going to leave those there, let them do their thing. And roses are blooming. As I said, the red one's always the first one to bloom, and that's exactly what happened. It's actually red and pink together. And you can see it's the pink's on the right side, and then the red is on the left side. So those are all blooming now, looking absolutely beautiful. And the white ones are getting ready to bloom. They're the second ones to bloom. And then the final one to bloom is the very short one over here that is a peach color, a very vibrant peach color. Lots of leeks and stuff like that in here in this section near the roses. Artichokes are still doing good. They're still putting on more growth. I'm noticing some more leaves and things. Are just really slow to do so. That's how it happens every single year. So, and I'm just admiring the beauty as well of the hanging baskets that we created. And they are just beginning to really fill out, and all the colors that are going on with those is just fantastic. Loving the colors in those. But here is a good view of the garden going on right now. Definitely filling out, getting a lot of greenery in there. We've still got some squash coming up. They've been a little slow this season because we've had cool temperatures, and it's been not really wet. We had wet at the beginning of the spring, and then it has dried off, but it's just been kind of cool. We've had some 90-degree days and things like that here in Cheyenne, but then it'll go down to like barely 80, some 70s. So squash, they thrive more in like 80 degrees, 85 degrees. They're happy at that, but they're still doing really well. They're starting to put on some real good growth, and we've got all of our flowers planted through here. I've got bachelor buttons, calendula, zinnias, aster, all kinds of things planted through here. Everything is up and just going to town. So I'm looking forward to a lot of blooms and color this season. We had quite a bit of flowers last season. I don't have as many sunflowers this season as I did last season, simply because Sometimes the sunflowers will shade out the plants, and I really didn't want that to happen. But I do have sunflowers here and there tucked away in different places, and I'm trying out some shaded areas this time to see if they do okay, because I've had sunflowers come to bloom in some shaded areas. They're not quite as big, but they're still very pretty, so I went ahead and got some of those in there. And then I do have some in the full sun like I showed you around the eggplants. So we're going to go into a part 2, and we will continue this little updated garden tour. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they show up, and we will see you in the part 2.